Alright, what is going on, guys? Today I want to break down the 12-factor app, which is a set of guidelines that was written by Adam Wiggins that I think perfectly encapsulates the way I like to build apps and the way that I would suggest you go about architecting and building your own apps. So, real quick before I get started with that, I just want to say, obviously I don't have a camera or anything for this one. You want to look here, it looks unbelievably terrible. I don't know how or why the quality got this bad. I just moved locations and it went from bad to even worse. So I'm just going to turn that off for now. Hopefully I'll be able to get this sorted in the next couple weeks. But for now, we're just going to do the screen. So bear with me, but hopefully we'll have it back soon. So with that out of the way, one more thing before we get started. If you're not subscribed, please do subscribe. We've got a few more days left in November, trying to hit 1,000 by the end of it. It's pretty ambitious, but I think we could get there. So please do so if you're so inclined. And without further ado, let's get into the 12-factor app. So the first factor that we're going to talk about is the code base. To go through all of these examples, I'm going to use a little app that I built a couple videos ago as an example. This is a Fiber MongoDB app, which is a basic CRUD API. You can read and write from a database, send HTTP requests to it, exposes a web server. Nothing too crazy complicated, but I think it's a really great place for us to showcase all these different concepts in one place. So first concept that we're going to talk about is the code base. In the 12-factor app, we have one code base that controls our entire app, but then that one code base can have multiple deploys. So what does that mean? So what does it mean for a code base to have multiple deploys? This little diagram on the 12-factor app webpage, which I'll link below, does a really good job of showing this, where basically we have one code base, which is the single source of truth for our app, but we deploy this to multiple places. We have this on our dev environments, we develop it locally, and then we push this up to a staging environment. So this code base is pointed to the staging environment. It's also going to be what points to production. So instead of having a production Git repo, a staging repo, a dev repo, or whatever, you just have one single code base with multiple branches that point to multiple different environments. The next thing that the 12-factor app specifies is dependencies. Dependencies are effectively, they're external things that our app relies on. They're not something that you would naturally think about all the time, but they're extremely important. For this example, I wrote the whole thing in Go, so all my dependencies are going to be stored in my go.mod file. This go.mod file will explicitly list out all of my dependencies and the versions that it requires, and that is that's what the second part of the 12-factor app dictates. It dictates that you explicitly declare and isolate all of your dependencies, which effectively means I have this explicit list of, okay, here's what I need. These are the exact packages I need and the exact versions I need, so that whenever I run my app, Go will be able to automatically fetch me the correct versions. And then if I'm running this in dev or in prod or in staging, all of my dependencies will work the exact same. Other languages have very similar things. Node has NPM, and more specifically, the package.json and the package lock.json. These provide explicit lists of all of your dependencies, and it's really important when you're working with any language or any app that you intend to take to production and use across multiple environments, that you have an explicit list of all your dependencies. The next piece of the 12-factor app is config, and what this config means is that all of your configuration for your app, which means like the API keys or the things that you're storing, or the URLs to some external service or something like that, all of that is stored in the environment instead of in the code base. So let me show you an example of that right here in my .env file. This .env file is effectively the configuration of my local environment. It's telling my app that we are going to be pointing to MongoDB at localhost 27017, and then our port we're going to expose at 8080. So we're setting this config in our .env, and then within our actual app, we can load this environment, and then with using these environment variables, we can set up our app accordingly, because obviously if we're in a development environment, we want to point to a local MongoDB instance, but if we're in a production environment, we need to point to the production MongoDB instance. The next thing we have is backing services. Backing services is basically anything that your app is going to use outside of the code base. So that would be a database, an image server, an authentication provider, anything like that. All of those things are treated as backing services, which effectively means that they are going to be connected via some external URL or something like that. And one of the key features of these is that we do not care if these are local or if these are coming from some external URL. And this is showcased really well with MongoDB in this example, which in this case, MongoDB is a backing service for our app. And here we are connecting it via this MongoDB URI, but our app doesn't care whether that MongoDB connection is pointing to a MongoDB instance running on my computer or a MongoDB instance running on AWS. It doesn't matter to it. All that matters is that it will point All that matters is that when we spin it up, it will point to some MongoDB instance, and we will have that backing service that we can always connect to via this URI. So the next thing we have is build, release, run. Build, release, run is something that you're not going to run into sort of as explicitly with a lot of the modern frameworks and languages, because oftentimes, especially when you're starting out, you're not going to be using stuff like Docker or anything like that. So everything that happens in the build, release, run stage sort of happens automatically for you. But what's effectively happening in here is we are building our app. So we're taking our code and we're building it. And then once we built that, we combine it with the config of our environment. So in this case, if we were to build this locally, we would run go run build, and then it would combine it with this .env file. So we would combine that config in our build into one release, and then this one release would then be run on whatever environment we're trying to run it on. So I wanted to run this on my computer, we would run that release, or more specifically in a production environment, we would build the Docker image, we would inject our environment variables, and then we would orchestrate that Docker image in like K8s or something like that, and we would spin it up and actually release that. So again, with a lot of these services like Vercel or Railway or Heroku or any of these things, you don't have to worry about all this stuff. It sort of just does it under the hood for you. But the sort of idea is we're taking our code, we're building it, and then we combine it with our environment variables, and then we release it. Next up, we have processes, and this is one of the most important pieces of the 12-factor app. And one of the things that really kind of drew me to it, and one of the things that really resonates, is that every single app should be made up of one or more stateless processes. And what does it mean for a process to be stateless? That means that we could turn it on and then turn it off again, and it wouldn't matter, and there's no important data being saved within the server. So anytime I spin up this server, if I run it and then shut it down and then start it up again, it won't matter, because we're not saving state within the actual server. We're saving our state to some backing service like a database. So in this case, we are saving all of the state of this app to a MongoDB instance. So if I connect to the same MongoDB instance, then yes, we will maintain our state, we'll maintain the same books and whatever within our database, but we're not going to maintain that just within the app itself. The app we're not saving to memory in here. The one sort of exception to this is session state, but that's something that you can get around and you don't necessarily need to bake into your app. So for example, if you need to issue something that is only going to last for maybe a couple hours, so you don't want to put it in your database and you just want to issue a session, but you need to be able to read that quickly, a good solution instead of just reading that into your app's memory is to load that into something like Redis or something like that. So put it in cache instead of just loading it into memory so that our app remains stateless and we can spin it up, spin it down however much we want, and this will come in later when we talk about concurrency and scalability. Number 7 is port binding. You saw this sort of earlier when I had my port here, but effectively what this means is it's just a sort of standard that helps us host these, where instead of bringing in our own custom web server every time, we will expose some HTTP server on localhost and we will bind it to whatever port is passed in. So that means that we're going to bind our app to 8080 in this case if it's local, or if I'm hosting this on some provider, I'll get that environment variable from them and then host and expose it on their port, and then whatever environment we're hosting it on will manage the sort of reverse proxy to actually serve that traffic out to the internet. So they'll handle if they want to use Nginx or something like it. It doesn't matter to us. All we care is that we are exposing a port, and then you configure on the server how you want to expose that to the public. Next, we have concurrency. So I hinted at this earlier, and effectively what this means is that we can scale out by using these stateless processes. So scaling horizontally is extremely easy with this sort of 12-factor app, and the reason for that is because we don't care. None of these processes depend on each other. So I have one process that's running this app. I can have that one little block running. And then if I need to split that into 5 different blocks, it doesn't matter because each one doesn't depend on another and there's no shared state or state on the server. They're all pointing to backing services. So I can infinitely scale that horizontally, which also lends itself to the serverless architecture, where if I had one thing running, I'd be able to spin up a serverless call and spin up infinite horizontal serverless calls because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether or not they can realize what the other is doing because it's stateless. Number 9 is disposability. So disposability, we sort of talked about this in the last step, but effectively what that means is that any of our processes or any of our apps can be gracefully shut down very quickly and easily, and there's no penalty or no issue with that happening. So the reason for that is because we want to be able to scale these horizontally via either something like Kubernetes, where we're creating more processes via Docker, or via something like serverless, where we can spin up infinite amounts and then spin them down. We do this by making sure that our apps and processes are very easy to get up and running. And this will also make continuous continuous deployment and making and actually maintaining these things 100 times easier than if it was very difficult to get this shut down or something like that. Number 10 is development and prod parity. So this is something that is personally really important to me because a thing that I ran into when I was first learning how to do this stuff is I didn't really understand production, which led me to make some bad architectural decisions for local development convenience, but then when I actually went to deploy it, it didn't make much sense. And effectively what this dev prod parity is talking about is if you have something set up in your development environment, make sure that you have a mirror of it in your production environment. So the best way I can explain this here is with the MongoDB example again. So our MongoDB instance on localhost and on our local MongoDB and our prod MongoDB are effectively the same. We don't really care which one it is. All we care is that we have that same external backing service. And a big thing here is that we want to make sure that we're using the same technologies in both dev and prod. You don't want to be using two different backing services for two different environments. You want to make sure that you can easily you want to make sure that it's as easy as switching out like an environment variable or some very basic config to switch from a dev environment to a prod environment. And this is key because what this will allow you to do is instead of needing a giant specialized team that will do all of the deployment for you and handle merging all of the new config into the app and doing all this stuff, it's as simple as you can handle it yourself by injecting different environment variables into your prod environment, and then it just works. So you have one team that does all the dev and all the deploy. For number 11, we have logs. This is a sort of basic one, but basically all it means is that instead of setting up some weird custom logging or whatever, you should just log everything to std out, so to the standard output. So here I'm doing that by just doing logger.new. Whenever I'm running this app, it will just print out my logs down here. So we just do that, and then whenever we want to like save our logs or do something with them, we can handle that on the server via our a third-party provider or whatever we want to do, but we don't worry about logs in the app. The app itself will never concern itself with storing all this stuff. It will just print it out as it gets it, and then something else can handle that. Finally, we have administrative processes. This is something that I don't really have on this FiberMongo example. The best example of this I can give is migrating a relational database. So say you need to run your SQL migrations. This is an administrative task that should be done in some separate process as a one-time job. Instead of making this a party or app or whatever, just make it a separate one-time job that can run in the same sort of environment. This is really convenient in some other languages like Python or Ruby, where they have a special little shell that you can open up and just execute commands. JS doesn't have that to my knowledge, but it can still be very easy to just run these as separate administrative tasks, and that is a really good way of making sure that this logic is easy to use and deal with on your end, and it doesn't bog down your app and create issues for you. So that is a little introduction to the 12-factor app. The 12-factor app, this sort of pattern is something that I have been using for a long time before I even knew about it, but when I found this, I thought that this was phenomenal. I really like this. Like I said, I'll put the link to this down below. Please check it out. These are really, really good sort of general basic concepts that I think everyone should try and implement to help it'll make your life a lot easier, because if you develop apps in this way, all the hosting providers and services and stuff, they're all built around this. You'll kind of find that if you're trying to deploy to almost any platform, they kind of work this way. And all these backing services like a database provider like PlanetScale or MongoDB Atlas, they work this way. All of this stuff sort of works together. It'll also make your life a lot easier because you'll have a really good pipeline to go from development to staging to prod. You'll have really robust and clean config setup, and it'll just make your life a lot easier. So definitely give this a shot, take a look at this stuff, and really think through how you're architecting your apps. It'll save you a lot of time in the long run. Spending a couple hours before you get started making sure you have a good setup is absolutely worth the time investment. So yeah, that's about it. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.